With the first pick in the 2012 WNBA draft, Los Angeles Sparks select Nneka Ogwumike.
Now, with what we hopefully catalyzed in this current collective bargaining agreement, there's players that now have opportunities to not only make more money, but to be compensated in the league market, in the team market, so that they don't feel like they have to go overseas,
Right.
which also affects motherhood and child planning.
Right.
So now you don't have to decide, when am I going to have my kid? Or am I scared to tell them that I'm pregnant?
Right.
And those are the types of resources and implications that we wanted to change at a foundational level that can hopefully create a much better future for women's basketball.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Jerry Brewer, a sports columnist here at the Post. Thanks for joining us today for our second installment of our new series, Leveling the Playing Field, featuring women in sports from athletes to coaches to executives. Joining me today is WNBA champion, former MVP, and president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, Nneka Ogwumike. Nneka, welcome to Washington Post Live.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. You've spoken before about double standards and stereotypes within how people consume the sport. What are some of those double standards, and what do you think people are watching when they tune in to watch women's basketball?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of stigmas and stereotypes that we navigate on a daily to the point where I try my best to really tune them all out. Um, but everyone thinks we don't make any money at all. People don't know that we play 12 months out of the season. Um, and that watching women's basketball is not exciting. Those are all fallacies and things that I think are quickly becoming dispelled, especially as we see the push in following and visibility on the collegiate level. And I think that people who watch the WNBA are watching good basketball. They're watching their favorite players coming from college. They're watching growth. They want to be a part of this growth and this change. And so it's exciting to see new fans. It's obviously always reassuring to have fans that exist, but also people loving the game for what it is and not comparing it to the NBA.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little deeper, Nneka. You're talking to someone who appreciates all levels of basketball for what they are, and appreciates the women's game just as much as the men for my own reasons. But what do you think are some of the pervasive differences between women's basketball and men's basketball, and maybe what we should appreciate about the women's game?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, firstly and foremost, the NBA is a men's league and the WNBA is the women's league. And because of that, naturally, it'll be different. Men play more above the rim, and we definitely kind of display more fundamental and skill underneath the rim. Now we're evolving to seeing players play above the rim as well. So that's kind of great to have like that foundational component of fundamentals and now mixing it with athleticism and skill. Um, and quite frankly, it's the beauty of the game. I think celebrating those differences is what makes this WNBA what it is. It's what helps people enjoy it, and hopefully, it's what brings new viewership. I love playing in the WNBA. I love what I learn playing in the WNBA, and I love that it differentiates us. And also, too, I think if we're talking, in the grand scheme of things, the game is also branding, partnership, platform. And in my opinion, I may be biased, but I really do think that women have the edge up on how we use our platforms and the influence that we have in using our platforms and being athletes with platforms.
Nneka, let's talk about your Sparks and this season. I mean, this is going to be, I hate to date you here, but season number 12 for you
Oh, no,
since
proud of
you,
that number.
I mean, it's incredible. What an incredible career you've had so far. Uh, this offseason, you took a little bit of a shave, took a little less money so that the Sparks could build a better team around you. What do you think about that decision and the team you have right now?
I mean, it's really how I regard playing here. It's it is an honor and a privilege to play in the WNBA and to play for the LA Sparks. And so I'm at a point in my career where I'm very proud to have had this longevity. And I want to continue it, and I want to continue it in greatness. And so this season it called for a different approach on how we could kind of formulate this team. So I'm happy that we were able to get good players in, and even better people, and to be competitive here playing in LA. So this the season in front of us is the only one that I'm really looking at right now. And however we got there, it's building trust, it's building partnership, and ultimately success.
Nneka, you've used the words culturally relevant when you talk about the impact that you want your team to have. What did you mean by that? And how does what you do on the court translate off the court?
Yeah, I mean, aside from just being in the WNBA, we are in a championship market. Los Angeles has so much rich history as a sports city, as a championship city. The legacy that permeates the city is amazing, and so that's what I mean when I talk about the relevance that we have in culture, and ultimately in the WNBA as well. We've seen a lot of success with how we kind of galvanize as players in a union and ultimately players in this league to do things bigger than what we're doing on the court. And so, I think that's all a part of it. That's something that we can't ignore because, quite frankly, people are watching us, whether we're playing or advocating, and also, changing the game culturally. Really making trends and creating impact and influence. So the best way that we can do that in LA is to respect the history and then build off of that.
Nneka, as both a franchise player uh, and the president of the Players Association, how do you balance those dual responsibilities?
I think it's an everyday thing. It in the beginning, I didn't actually understand what the role held. I knew that the president um, had a very significant role, but I think I tried my best to make it what suits my leadership style. And so I was very adamant on communication, a lot of listening. And so that's something that I kind of hang my hat on when I consider how I want to lead. I want to lead and listen to empower others to have their space and their agency to talk. And so that is something that I use both as president and also as a teammate, as a captain. And so for me, that's kind of how I always strike my balance. I try to make sure that if I don't know what to do, I'm asking questions. If I have to make a decision, I'm consulting. And so communication is really the connector for how I want to network and balance my role as both president and as a player.
Did you sense you were stepping into that leadership role at such a seminal moment in the sports history?
I did not realize that I was stepping into the role at such a pivotal point, but I did understand that me stepping into the role was major because we had a former president and a Hall of Fame player, Tamika Catchings, and those are really big shoes to fill. And so I wanted to make sure that I respected what she brought us and left us with, and continue to carry that on and just be better for the women of this league.
What are some of the promises and goals that you're most proud that you've been able to deliver on, and what work is left to be accomplished?
I'm someone that I don't necessarily make promises. I just have goals and standards, and you can you can land above it, you can land below it, but either way, there's always opportunity to build towards something more. And so, one thing that I'm really happy about are the changes that we were able to make in the collective bargaining agreement. They're probably the most changes we've ever experienced in a CBA, and whether it was protecting planning mothers and pregnant mothers, even something as simple as everyone getting their own hotel room on road trips, increasing the player experience and health and safety, which we still have a long way to go. Um, but using that as the launching pad, though all those changes that we were able to achieve to get to the true vision is what I'm most proud of.
Now, I remember NECA covering the changes to the CBA. Everyone's really excited about the progress you made. Then pandemic, right? And the last 3 years, it's been an incredible time on multiple levels for the sport, but also I think for women's basketball collegiately and at the pro level, stepping into its power. So, where do you think you are in this process now, um, in terms of reshaping identity, and then also being able to monetize what's great about the game?
Oh man, I mean, I don't think we ever really have like a set list of like goals. But where we stand now is just being ready, always being ready, being educated, communicating to each other about what's going on, educating ourselves from those, that we have the privilege of engaging with outside of the realms of our sport to get a better understanding of our country, of this world, of society and culture, so that we can do whatever we can with what our platform offers to make change and advocate and to educate. And I'm very grateful for that. Um, we've been able to do some really big things just because we've come together and we have a common goal of just wanting to be better for each other. And so I find that we're just now a group of people that are just ready. We're always ready.
As this WNBA season begins, you'll be a part of, I think, one of the most emotional and significant moments in league history as the Sparks and Mercury play against each other, and Brittany Griner makes her return. Uh, what has the past year been like for you, as a friend, and as a leader within the league? And what's it? Can you even picture what it's going to be like being on the court with her again?
Yeah, I've just the past year was a lot. The reality of hearing that news took a while to settle in, not just for me, but for a lot of players. That's not something you ever want to hear happen. And for me, I mean, I played in Russia for 4 seasons, and immediately I just thought like that could have been me. Like that could have been any one of us. That was a very competitive market that offered wonderful livelihood and opportunity for players. And coming to terms with that, and now figuring out what we could do besides sit there and wait, was imperative. And we had so much love and support, and communication and organization to figure out how we could keep her name out there, only to be so wonderfully surprised within a year to hear that she was coming back, because I think that year mark is what people were fearing. And so it was really great to be able to hear that she was coming back. And in my opinion, I think it's even more remarkable that she's playing. It's kind of crazy. I've already had the pleasure of, playing against her in a preseason game. And so to be able to play against her opening night is going to be very special.
What did you say to her before that preseason game or during
Nothing much. Just gave her a nice, good Ogwumike sister sandwich hug.
it? Hey, I was talking to Kia Nurse recently, and she talked about where she was when she heard the news that Brittany was free, and she heard the news, and she was on a plane, and the plane was about to take off, and she didn't know if her excited text message had gotten through until she landed. What was that moment like when you heard the news?
Yeah, I was in Miami shooting a Super Bowl commercial, and so I got a text early that morning, and I mean, it was really for me, it was really like tears of joy, just like a nice quiet reflection before my day got started, just something to be very, very grateful for.
Nneka, could you reflect on the discourse last year when Brittany was being detained? Do you think there was a gender issue and a race issue as part of that conversation?
I mean, that's something those are 2 things that we talk about every day because that's the composition of our league, mostly, Black women, and so, I think I would like to kind of consider it more when it comes to, like, equity. Both are those are 2 topics that fully surround this idea around equity, and BG was over there because she was making a living, just like any one of us would, but then also too, the conversation around her priority is very reflective of what a lot of Black women experience in the world and especially in our country. And so that was something that we lived with every day, not just because it was BG, but also because a lot of us live with those realities every day. And I really hope that that conversation doesn't die because she's come back.
Where do you and some of your peers that you talk to stand on playing internationally after that incident?
People are definitely very wary. I mean, there's people that still go overseas, but the markets are just dwindling now because of both the pandemic and then also BG's wrongful detainment. So those opportunities are less. More players are coming out, and more players are getting away from the WNBA. There's just not a lot of opportunity. And I don't like that players have to decide between life and death when it comes to making a living and pursuing their dreams. So I hope something changes very soon.
And we're in that phase, NECA, obviously, as you know, of this prioritization, um, and making the WNBA the priority, even though you might make more money overseas. Um, where do you stand on that? I know it's an individual decision for different players, and
Mhm.
can you foresee, let's say, in the next 5 or 10 years, that being addressed in terms of enhancing the salaries once again?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that enhancing the salaries takes way less than 5, but but, um, when it when it comes to prioritization, I'm never gonna knock a player that is seeking opportunity. Like, I'm never going to disagree with that. I guess, like, the way that I see it is there's a balance. So, if we want to prioritize this league, we need more opportunities. We need more money, we need more roster spots, we need more resources and infrastructure. Or if that prioritization, say, for example, in this CBA is kind of like a trial and error, then players can go play overseas, and create a living that way or create a career that way. It's difficult because I don't think it's one or the other. It's about what works for each individual player. And right now, we're seeing an influx. We're seeing high demand. Sorry, not a high demand. We're seeing a high influx of players, and the demand is it's not matching the amount of players that are seeking opportunities. So I really hate to see that. I say it all the time. There is a league of women training at home, and that has to change.
Wow, wow, that's very powerful to think about. Wanted to ask you one lighthearted question before I transition to more money issues in college and NIL. Got to ask you about Shanae and you all playing again together. What do you think this season is going to be like? Um, and I mean, do you foresee multiple seasons in which you and Shanae may be on the court together?
Yeah, I mean, right now, what this is, I think, the fourth season. I mean, third if we're not counting the bubble. That I'm playing with my sis. So I'm very hopeful that we'll continue to play, really win with each other, and we kind of go with each other, and we want to do great things together. So as we get closer to those great things, we're gonna continue to play together.
I'm wondering, growing up, I mean, you all have become such prominent voices for different reasons, right? You know, you within the leadership of the league, Shanae as just a wonderful television analyst who can analyze any level of the game. Is this where you pictured you all would be in high school at Stanford? And what do you think about Shanae as a basketball analyst?
I think she's the best, no question about that. But I can't say that I really envision like, okay, Shanae's gonna be commentating ESPN, 'cause she's gonna be a sports commentator. I didn't envision being president, but now, hindsight is kind of 2020. We were certainly gravitating towards these paths. And I think it's lovely to see that these roles kind of found us through opportunity and also through kind of nurturing our own disciplines. And it's really beautiful. I'm excited that our careers have taken these avenues, and then also for us to be able to come together, especially on the same team, to share in our success, but then also grow together with our different expertises.
Nick, I got a real kick when I was mentioning 5 or 10 years about enhanced calorie. I'm like, wait a minute, 5 years? Start doing the math. How about like a year or two, so you can get some of
Right.
that money? That's just a segue to talk about NIL, name, image, and likeness, which is all the rave in college sports. And if you believe some of the numbers, there are some elite players really, really profiting off of that. As the women's college basketball just grows in relevance. I'm wondering, let me ask first of all, if the Agumake sisters were playing in an NIL era, what do you think you all would have been able to command? And what do you think overall about how the dynamics of power and the ability to profit off of your play has changed college athletics?
Yeah. I don't know how much we would have been able to demand, but I probably wouldn't have had to make the decision between eating and filling up my car. but but I love the opportunity that a lot of these players are getting. Quite frankly, I'm not really jealous of it because I don't know how these athletes manage NIL, performing at a high level and getting good marks, in school. But I love any opportunity for athletes to capitalize on their natural talents. You're good and you worked hard at it. And so for you to be able to benefit from the fruits of that labor, I think is great. Now, I will say that we kind of went from 0 to 100. So right now there was no NIL and now that's all there is. And so I think that there's going to be kind of like a rebalancing where you kind of bring it a little bit back to the middle, hopefully, that can still maintain the integrity of what college sports is while ensuring that players retain their value and profit off their value, and also, of course, enhance, what the schools profit from having these types of players. Because it is the institutions and it is the players. It's a combination of the two and making those decisions to have players benefit from it, but also the institution to do it needs to have some type of balance. I really love it for women's college players because the opportunities to play professionally in whatever sport there are much less. So them capitalizing on that is great, but I do think that there's a lot of miseducation and ignorance around how that translates to the professional ranks as it pertains to the WNBA. There's lots of players that are making great money in college, but there's lots of players that are also making great money in the WNBA. And I think it's very important to put that out there because no one really reads articles anymore. No one does their research. They just read headlines. And a lot of times those headlines are not fact checked. And so I just want people to do their education on just the reality of things.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, Neko, because there is kind of this perception we're in this era of super seniors, right? Because everyone gets a COVID year if they want to take that, and there's this debate: do you come back for a fifth year, or do you go to the WNBA? And it
Mhm.
always is like, Aaliyah Boston decided to come out. If she had come back, there was sort of this, oh man, she could make more bank at South Carolina than she could, going and playing for Indiana this year. it'll be the same thing with Caitlin Clark or whoever else is due in the next couple of years. Who played through COVID. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think about that idea? Because it almost professionalizes the women's game in some way. If people want to come back for a fifth year for reasons other than honing their basketball skills.
Right. I have two thoughts on exactly this topic. So, one is if you're doing your job, if you are working hard to play at the highest level and to retain those NIL deals and to play at a high level, then when you translate that to the league, it should hold true. So if you have NIL deals, now this is where I think that the delicacy of how NIL is handled changes because the markets are very different. But then because we're kind of in the wild, wild west with NIL, I do think that there's an oversaturation of how deals come about. So, there's certain deals that certain players may say no to that other players are saying yes to, that's basically justifying whoever is offering those deals, and they're just kind of getting those deals out instead of really adding intentional value to those deals and certain players. But ultimately, if you're playing at a high level and you have deals, then those deals should also translate. There's lots of players in WNBA that have their own partnerships and deals. And maybe they originated in the WNBA, but that interest was garnered in college before NIL happened. And then secondly, if we're speaking theoretically, you can't stay in college forever. You got to leave at some point. But if you but if you want to, you could play in the league as long as you're performing. So even with the COVID years and these super seniors, like you got to leave at some point. So why not set yourself up to do well when you know you have to leave?
One final question for you, Nneka. This season, you have this so-called super team era of the WNBA. You've had some years in which you've seen rating spikes. Like, what do you expect? In terms of what are you hoping for in terms of interest this year in television ratings, and then just in terms of quality of play and competition. What kind of year should we expect from the WNBA?
I mean, I think that I can speak to what I hope for and what I expect. I expect more visibility. I expect easier access to games. I expect a lot of energy around these super teams, even though what I hope for is that people are engaged and also do their history. I think I played on a super team some years ago. I played against a lot of super teams, but this is a new age where a lot of people who are kind of getting accustomed to watching the W probably don't know their history. And it wasn't even 10 years ago that, I played on a team with Elena Beard, Candace Parker, Christy Tolliver. And I played against teams with Simone Augustus, Lindsay Whalen, Brunson, Sylvia Fowles, like, I've played on teams and against teams where we understand that there's so many arsenals on a particular squad. But that might have been back in the day where, the competition was a little bit different. So whatever it takes for you to be engaged in the W, roll with it. Let that be your avenue, let that be your gateway, and just make the effort. I think that a lot of it's easy for people to kind of rest on the stigma of nobody watches and then they don't try just because they want to be cool or they want to sound funny. That's very played out. And I also believe that anyone who isn't getting into it now is going to be they're going to be left behind in a few years, if not this year.
That's a perfect way to end it. We're out of time. We'll leave it there. Nneka Ogwumike, WNBA star, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jerry.
And thanks to all of you for watching. I'm Jerry Brewer, and to find out more about our upcoming programming, please visit WashingtonPostLive.com. Thanks for joining us.